Everybody out there, I know it's mainly just our students out there, so it's not too bad. But I'm John Stinson. Tonight you guys are at our open house, of course, and tonight we have our guest speaker, Mike Grubbs, and he's going to tell his story and tell us what it's all about. So without further ado, Mike Grubbs, come on up.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Sorry, I come from concert world, so I'm used to asking for feedback when I say stuff. It's so cool to be here tonight. It's so cool to meet all you guys, see everybody graduating. Congratulations. What a huge thing that is. Like, what a major thing it is in life to get to that new moment, that new mountaintop. It's really awesome. I remember how that felt for me at the time. It was pretty scary. So I'm stoked for you guys. You've got a really amazing career ahead of all of you. So I also love that I could pick out the studio nerds the minute I walked in here. I was like, these guys are producers. I know these guys are producers. All right, so I'll start off with who I am and why you guys should listen to me today. And this first part of the talk is the part that's the most uncomfortable for me, because I have to talk about myself for a minute. So excuse me if I look at my notes from time to time. So I have been very fortunate to be a successful artist, a successful songwriter, producer, a composer, an actor, and just kind of an all-around creative. I started off, I also, now in addition to all that, I'm a music industry executive. I'm the head of A&R for a global publishing company called Kilphonic Rights. We have offices in New York, LA, also Austin and Sydney, Australia, and Tokyo, Japan. I guess, let's see, during my artist career, I had a record that hit #1 on the Billboard Heat Seeker chart. My last headlining tour as an artist, I had shows in 14 countries and 27 American cities. So I had a pretty legitimate career when it was in the touring and being an artist phase. I've also, as a producer, I've had music in ads for Honda. I actually had a Super Bowl ad with Honda. That was pretty awesome.
Cool.
Google, Apple, Volkswagen, a ton of different primetime TV shows. Also Netflix shows like The Recruit, and I had a song on the last season of Elite as well. I've scored multiple seasons of a TV show for Hulu. My last direct scoring project one-on-one with someone was with Post Malone.
Nice.
I've gotten to work at some of the most famous studios in the world, which is pretty cool, including Avatar, which was formerly known as the Power Station in New York. Like if you listen to a pop record in the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s, it was probably recorded there. I worked at Brooklyn Studio G with Chris Cubetta, Tony Maimone, and Joel Hamilton. I worked a lot there with them for years. Joel, actually, after one of the sessions we did, he went and won a Grammy that night for Best Rock Record. So it was a pretty cool time. I worked at Flux Studios with Fab DuPont. Fab, you might know from the Pure Mix thing. That's all him if you do any of that online stuff. I actually, when I was an artist, Elton John brought me to his private studio in London, and we got to, he basically was like deciding who his next person was going to be. And I split days in the studio with another artist, and the other artist won, which is fine with me because it was Ed Sheeran. Yeah, and then as a songwriter, I've gotten to write with everyone from Carly Rae Jepsen to Grizz Folk to Kate Vogel. Kate and I actually have a project together now that we do for fun that we just released some music for. So I'm still in it, still making the music. And I started my career by being awarded an Abelman Scholarship from the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So you have to listen to me because of that stuff.
There you go.
Let's see. So I call this talk "What I've Learned from Surviving 20 Years in the Music Industry." Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you 3 stories from my life, and then I'm going to tell you what I learned during those processes. Let's see. I don't know how computers work, just so you know. That's one thing. Wait, am I doing this right?
I think you can use left and right arrow there too if you wanted. Yeah.
Damn.
Look at that.
Yeah. You can still learn at this point in life after all of that. Let's see. So the first chapter, I guess, was me moving to New York to get my first big break. When I was a kid, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I knew that I had to be in New York City. And the reason that I remember I would watch TV and the David Letterman show, at the beginning, they'd go through the streets of New York, and I would watch them go through the streets of New York, and I would look over at my dad, and I would go, why don't we live there? That is where everything is. That's where we have to live. And I want to also say, like, this was a very different time, too. Like, this was the 90s. And we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. Nothing was global the way that it is now. Yeah. So I think it's important to know for you guys that are just graduating here, you don't have to be in New York to be a successful artist anymore. At that time, though, things were very different. So it was important for me to be there. So when I graduated college, I actually tied 2 mattresses that I stole from the dorm to the top of my car and drove straight to New York City. I didn't know a soul. I did not know anybody. I was literally just me in this whole city. There was one guy I had met one time at a party, and he had an open room at his place in Queens, so I moved in with him. And because I didn't know anyone there, because I didn't have a community, I spent years just kind of floundering around trying to figure out what I was going to do. And the first place that I found where I really was at home was this place called the Sidewalk Cafe. The Sidewalk Cafe was a bar on the Lower East Side that had an open mic that was like the most legendary open mic in the world. And also, for all of you that are production guys, just know, this starts with me being an artist and it ends with me being a producer. So we're going to get to the...
What year was that?
2000 was probably when I first started going to...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was in Lower East Side in 90.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a decade before.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever went there. I mean, Latch had been doing the open mic for a while. It was a pretty, it was real wild. Because it wasn't like your average open mic. Like, it was real punk. Like, so it wasn't as much people like sitting there strumming guitars. People would do wild stuff. And the people that were there, too, because it was New York in the early 2000s on the Lower East Side, is the most exciting place in the world. I mean, and it would be, I remember, like, I was friends with Lizzie Grant, who's now Lana Del Rey, and we would go to the open mic together and sit down to play. And we'd sit next to Regina Spektor and Gavin DeGraw, and Lady Gaga would come through there. And the Moldy Peaches, like one of the coolest bands of all time, would play there. Kimya Dawson, Adam Green, and Toby Goodshanks. So basically, I was just surrounded by the most exciting people in the world. Like, it was just incredible. And that was where I really started to find myself as an artist. It was in that community that I learned who I was. I became a completely different person than I'd ever been in my life, because for the first time, I was surrounded by people like me. So in the course of that, I started this new band. It was called Wakey Wakey. And the idea is that we were going to have songs that were disguised as love songs, but were actually secretly very political songs. And people would fall in love with them, they'd sing them, and then one day they'd be like, oh, wait, is this about such and such? I wanted to put bombs in people's heads to go off. And it was the first project that actually succeeded. It was the first thing that actually connected, and it was wild. And it was because of the lessons I learned at that open mic, the way that I learned to play piano, the way that I fought with the people in those communities for space, for time, to be the best, to have that community. It was everything to me. So anyway, I started this band called Wakey Wakey, and it started kind of taking off. Like, it was the first one. I'd been doing stuff. I've been basically like a bartender for like 8 years. I just literally like bartend, I'd get off work, and I'd go somewhere and play. I'd get up the next morning, I'd go back and bartend. And it was a grind for like 8 years. And then the open mic moved. We ended up at another place that was further out in Brooklyn because the Lower East Side was too expensive. And so we started going to this place called Bar 4. Bar 4 became like the center of everything for me. There's years of the early 2000s that I cannot tell you what was on the radio. I cannot tell you what was in modern music, because all I listened to was the music that my friends made. And it was amazing. It was an awesome period of time. And there I made this project, Wakey Wakey, and it started connecting, and I started doing a little bit of touring. I started having some fans, started playing it at the venues that I always wanted to play in New York, and we were like an underground Brooklyn band. We had a following, like people knew who I was. It was cool. So I stopped going to the open mic because that's what you do. eventually you finish workshopping something, you take it out and you let it do its thing. But I remember I had a discussion with myself before that where I was like, I have to make sure that I check in. Like I have to check in because this is the scene that made me. So I have to check in with this scene and make sure that I'm still part of that scene, that I'm still, what I'm doing is still acceptable with these people that are so important to me. So, you know, sometimes months would go by and I'd be like, it has been too long, I got to get back to bar 4. So I go back, play at the open mic. This one night that I went and did it, I went to the open mic and I didn't know a lot of people there. It was kind of weird. I knew like 3 folks, and I knew the sound guy, Nico, and there was a woman there that I was like, that's like the prettiest person I've ever seen in my life, and I have to talk to that person, but I am not cool enough to talk to that person. So I went over to Nico and I was like, put me in next so that I can play, so then I can talk to this person, because there's no way I can talk to this person if they don't know that my superpower is actually playing the piano. So I was like, I have to pull the cape out before I, do this. So I got up, I played the songs, I went directly over to the bar where she was sitting to try and hit on her, and the first thing she did was like held up her hand and she was like, hey, I'm gonna stop you right there. This is an engagement ring. I know that people like you don't see that, but this is important to me, so I don't want to talk to you in that way, but I want to talk to you about your music. And I was like, okay, cool, like, that's fine too. I'm kind of a narcissist, so let's go for it. And she was like, I'm a writer on this television show. It's called One Tree Hill. And at that time, One Tree Hill was like the show, right? So she's like, I'm a writer on this show called One Tree Hill, and I think your music would be perfect for it. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds great. Let's do it. And she was like, I'm going to bring the creator of the show back to this same open mic in 2 weeks. I want you to play the same 2 songs. Don't change a thing. Just do what you did today. And I'm pretty sure he's going to use your music on the show. And I was like, that's cool. That's awesome. That sounds great. So 2 weeks later, I went back, I played the same 2 songs, and she was right. He was like, yo, this is awesome. I'm gonna put this stuff on my show. Like, this is great. And I was like, sure you are, bro, sure you are. Because at that point, I didn't believe anybody would do anything for me. Like, I had been 8 years of being a bartender, of trying to make my way. I was in this band, we're this underground cool band, but we weren't making any money. I was still bartending, I was still working hard all the time. I didn't have any downtime. I was just exhausted. I was so tired. And so one night I came home and I was tired and I picked up the phone and I called my mom. And I came from a family of musicians. Like my whole family, they were all church musicians. So it was like a different kind of thing. Like we were all, like real regular middle class people. They weren't like, my mom wasn't like someone famous or something like that. But I called her because I knew that in a way I was kind of living their dream. I was out there in New York. I was playing these open mics. I was this thing. And I was like, Mom, I'm really sorry, but I have to quit music. I can't do it anymore. And she was like, like I see how hard you've been trying, and I see how hard this is, and I understand, and you have to do what's right for you. It's fine. I understand. But I'm really proud of you for trying so hard and for doing everything that you did. And the next night I went to my friend's show and that episode of One Tree Hill with my song on it aired. And the next day that song was number 13 on the iTunes charts. And I called my mom and I was like, I changed my mind. I want to keep doing this. So that was the first chapter. That was it. So think about like 8 years of working, 8 years of trying, 8 years of everything, nothing working. And it's just like, man, I'm so tired. All I do is grind, hustle, grind. Nothing's actually happening. So these are the things that I learned from that chapter. First off, you have to find a community. You have to have a community. You have to have a group of people that challenge you, that support you. You have to have people that you're competing with. You have to have people that you respect to talk about things. And then when you find that community, you have to give as much to that community as you take away. And that is key, because a lot of people will join a group, like be part of something, and they'll go and they'll take and they'll take and they'll take, and then they'll move on to the next thing. That's not how society works. If you are a part of something and you love it and you get something from it, you have to give something back from it. You have to give something back to it. If I hadn't continued going back to kind of check on that community from time to time after I had been playing there and spinning all that stuff, I never would have gotten my break. You also have to break out of your bubble. You can't just be in that one group, though. Once you find those people that you love and you trust, they're your home base, but you can't stay at home all the time. You have to go out and find other people. Like one of the guys here, I think it's like 37 projects. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. You're already doing it. Like 20 projects, right? Like that's like you guys are out there, you're making it happen. So you get that already. The other thing, you have to adapt and grow. Like you're gonna get feedback from that community and it's gonna hurt sometimes, but you have to do it. You have to take it and you have to absorb it to your bones and you have to go with it. If I'd stayed the same person that I was playing at that open mic, I never would have gotten to a place where my music was ready to be on TV. When I got to New York, I wasn't ready for any of it. I was ready to learn, you know? And just because I'd come out of college and I graduated with honors and I was like the man and all that stuff, and I wasn't ready. So you have to be ready to adapt and grow. And then the other thing is, if you get an opportunity, you have to meet it head first. Like when she came to me and she said, I want to use your music in this, I could have been like, my music's not really good enough for that. Or I could have been like, I don't know. Or I could have not showed up 2 weeks later when he came. I could have done any of those things. But because I chose at that time to rise to the occasion and meet that moment as it was meeting me, and to meet it eye to eye head on, something actually came of it. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, what happens after you get famous? Guess what? It sucks. So first off, it didn't end with that one placement. I had a bunch more placements. And then I made my first full-length album as Wakey Wakey, and I was so proud of it. So I called those people because, like, what happened was the cast of One Tree Hill thought that I was super cool because my music was on the show. And I thought they were super cool because they were super famous, and they are actually cool. And so whenever they came to New York, they would come to the bars where I would work, and they would sit and talk to me about stuff. And we all became friends. We became like this big family. They'd come hang out. It was great. I would give them life advice because I was older than them already. I was in my 30s, you know. So then I finished my first record, and I called the creator of the show, and I was like, hey, man, like, I'd love for you to be one of the first people to hear this record because you and your show are the reason that I was able to afford a studio to record it. And he flew out to New York. He sat down in the studio with me, and I played him the record. And he was like, this is great. Like, this is a really good record. Like, we need to do more. He's like, we don't want to just have placements for this. He's like, I'm going to write you a role on the show. You're going to play yourself on One Tree Hill. We're going to have your character. He's going to be called Grubbs. And I'm going to sync every song from this record to the next season of the show. Wow. And then we're going to reveal halfway through the season that you are actually you. Your character is you. You're actually a musician. You're not just the bartender at the place there. So they did that. So I actually was real because I had the same thing. I was like, sure you are, bro, sure. And then the next thing you know, he called me. I was in a back of a terrible, terrible, uncomfortable van riding back from a gig that nobody came to. And he was like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, I got to work. And he was like, what if instead of work you flew down to Wilmington and you acted you were in a scene from the show? And I was like, I don't think my boss would let me do that. And he was like, what if I told you like you could do it a lot and you could quit your job? And that's what happened. I got to quit my day job after years of bartending, years of sweating, years of backbreaking, carrying ice up the steps, dealing with jerks, cutting people off, kicking people out of the bar, breaking up fist fights, all the stuff. Like, it sucked. It sucked. It was awesome too, but it sucked. So I got to quit, and it was the best thing in the world. I went off and I did the show. Our album came out. It was #1 on the Billboard Heat Seeker chart. I was a star. And then next thing you know, all the shows were sold out. We sold out the first London show. I tweeted about it and it sold out in 2 hours. They moved me to the bigger room. I tweeted about it. It sold out again. I was just touring. I had so many opening slots coming at me for big bands. I was turning them down. I was like, I don't want to tour with that guy. they're like, he's playing stadiums. And I was like, I don't care. I'm too cool for that. So I ended up touring Europe like 5 times with a dude named James Blunt. He had a song called You're Beautiful that was like a big hit. It was wild, wild. Like, and I would come out with a band, I'd play, and the whole band would leave, and I would do 4 songs solo, just me and a piano in front of like 6,000 people. And I would play my song, and they would scream and buy my records at the end. And I was like, dude, I made it. Like, I'm it. This is it. Like, it is. I'm Ed Sheeran now. It is official. The thing I didn't realize is, like, while all that was happening inside, I was kind of dying. Like, I had become this other thing, and I wasn't me anymore. I was like in this shell, being taken around for meet and greet, and signing things and shaking hands and doing this and talking to people while they cried and singing and playing and all this. And it was killing me. And I did it for like 6 years. 6 years. And I never wrote another record because I couldn't write anymore. Because all of my lyrics that I'd written in a notebook now were tattooed on hundreds of people. And they would come to my show and I would see the lyrics written, like, they'd be like, can you sign my tattoo? And I'd be like, that's stressful. And like, how do you write another lyric after that, right? How do you write another thing? How do you make something else when something you've done gets so big? So I decided that my next album had to be like a James Blunt album. It had to be huge, had to be a big pop record. So while I made the first record, it was me and this dude, Chris Cubetta, at a studio in Brooklyn with no money, nothing, in a studio that was like cobbled together. I mean, like literally, it was not near this place that you're sitting in right now, which is gorgeous, by the way. So we made that record. It was just Suez. I wrote 100% of the songs, everything that was on there. For this record, though, I was like, I'm a pop star now, so I have to be a pop star. So I had 14 writers, 7 producers. Wow. We went in to Flux Studio with Fab, who is the best, one of the most talented producers and mixers I've ever met in my life. Absolutely wonderful. But he and I made a record together that everybody hated, and that's fine. But everybody hated it, and that was it. I toured it some more. People just wanted to hear the songs off the first album. I was sad. My life was falling apart. Everything was bummed. Eventually, after all of this joy, after being this star and all this stuff, I had to go back to the bar and ask for my job back. Whoa. Because that's what happens sometimes. That's the way it goes. Like, this career is not made up of, like, this is not a sprint. It's not a race that you run and somebody crosses first and wins. This career is made up of the opinions of a ton of people that have all kinds of different motives for their opinions. And you have to live within that swirl and be okay with the fact that you're essentially out of control. So that's what happens after you get famous. Back in the real world, I played a bartender on TV, and now I was a bartender again. And people would come up to my bar and be like, you're not the, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm that guy. And it would be real awkward all the time. So these are the lessons I learned from that chapter of my life. 1, you have to be yourself and you have to be authentic. When you make music, when you do anything in life, you have to be yourself. If you're weird, you have to be the loudest version of weird that you can be for everyone to find you, for all the other weird people to find you, and then you can have the best party ever. So you can't hide behind stuff. I was worried that I could never meet the heights that I'd made with that first album. I couldn't get back to that place. So I hid. I hid under producers. I hid under other writers. I hid under big studios. I hid under big budgets, all this stuff. And all people wanted was for me to just play the piano and sing a song. So you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. You can't be afraid to hit pause if something isn't working. Like, if you're working on a record and something's bad, like, there's 2 kinds of walls that you hit, right? There's one wall that looks you in the eyes and it says, knock me down. I dare you to knock me down. You can push through this. And you're like, all right, and you push through it and you get to a better place. There's another wall that you meet that says, you need to go eat a sandwich. and you need to stop for a second. So don't be afraid to acknowledge the second wall and go eat a sandwich for a second and rethink things. Even when you're at small venues, you have to remember the sound guy's name. You have to be nice to everybody. The small studio you work at, in this industry, somebody's assistant is going to be the CEO in a year. It is wild how things work. You have to remember that no matter how superhuman you get as a producer, how superhuman you get as an artist, everyone that you deal with, they're all superhumans in their own life in some way or another. So you have to just meet everyone on that human level and stay there. Don't chase trends. I tried to make my record sound like James Blunt, Katy Perry, and all these people that were like so successful. It wasn't me. That's not what I sounded like. That's not the music that comes out of my body when I sit down. You have to make what is you. If you chase trends, you're already late to the game. And last, remember that this is not an objective industry. There's nothing about this industry that's objective. It is all subjective. You are always going to be a slave to whatever someone else is going through at that time. You can't make this industry conform to you. You have to be able to roll with the punches and realize that one day you're going to get a huge paycheck and then you might not get another one for a year. So you got to plan, or you're going to go back to the bar. It's going to suck. All right, chapter 3, final story. What happens when you finally grow up? So I was at this bar. People didn't want to write songs with me anymore. People wanted to write songs with me, but I just didn't want to write songs with people. And I didn't want to write songs with people. I didn't want to write songs with me. I was bummed. I was sad. And this one dude reached out to me, and he was like, hey, man, like, you've become a really successful songwriter. And I was like, I'm a really successful bartender. And he was like, you and I should write a song together. He's like, I'm trying to learn to write songs. Like, come write a song with me. And I was like, man. And I remembered the first rule, find a scene, be a part of that scene, respect that scene, give as much back to that scene as it's given you. Always go back to the place where you started. So I was like, I'll write a song with you, man. Let's do it. So I went to his house and we wrote a song and it was awesome. And I went back the next day and we wrote another song and it was even better than the first one. And then we wrote another song and another song and another song. And he was like, yo, man, like, do you want to know about production? And I was like, yes, I want to know about production. Yes, I've spent my whole life in these huge mega studios and everyone's been like, don't look at that. You don't need to know what that is. You just need to sing. Sing over there, pretty boy. So he started teaching me about production. We started making songs. We started a band. It was called Cheap Synths. And we released a song a week for 70 consecutive weeks.
Wow.
And we would be in the Guinness Book of World Records, except for one of the songs was a cover. And I didn't know that you couldn't do that. So anyway, he and I did that. And I learned to produce from him. He taught me how to produce. He taught me how to make songs, how to track, all this stuff. And all this because I almost was like, yo, I don't want to write with that dude. I don't want to go back there. But I remembered the first rule. And the rules, that's it. Doesn't matter how you feel. Rules are rules. So I learned that from him. I learned to produce. And then my friend was making a TV show. He called me. He was like, yo, man, I'm making this TV show, and I need some help with the music. Would you help me? I was like, sure, man. The next thing you knew, that grew. That project became something. It turned into a whole big show. It got picked up by Hulu. It became like a really successful show. And I suddenly had scored a Hulu show. And then suddenly people were calling me for other projects. And I'm scoring this, I'm scoring that. And I'm able to produce. I'm calling people from my old past life and saying, hey, I don't know if you play by the same rules I do, but we had a really good time once upon a time. Why don't we try writing a song again and see what happens? And now, it's the line out the door, because I know how to produce. So I remember what it was like to be an artist. I remember what it was like to be scared. I remember what it was like to not know what was happening with my rights, with my money, with anything. Then my other friend called me and he said, hey, I'm starting a publishing company. And, or I started a publishing company. It's going gangbusters, and I need someone in the middle of the country to help me with A&R, with finding new artists, finding new people. And I was like, I know a lot of songwriters and artists. And he was like, well, why don't you come do A&R for me part-time? So I did. And I realized that I knew nothing about the music industry. So I started asking him questions because he knew everything about the music industry. He explained publishing to me. He explained mechanical rights. He explained performing rights. He explained what PROs are, what all these different systems of royalties, neighboring rights, everything around the world. Suddenly, I really liked having this knowledge. I wanted to be an authority. I wanted to take back all of that power that I didn't have when I was an artist. Because when I was an artist, I didn't control my own destiny. So I wanted to know all of this. So I kept taking everything that I could from him, asking questions every day. I got the Donald Passman book. I made note cards. I memorized it. I want to be the authority on that stuff. So then A&R was going really well. Like, he was like, you want to be full-time? Yeah. Eventually, yo, man, like, you should be the head of this department. Like, you're really good at talking to artists. You understand what people's needs are, and you've really taken the time to learn this industry. So I learned to be an A&R. Now I'm the head of this A&R department at a pretty big company. I get to talk to artists all day long and talk about the mistakes that I made. I get to talk to them about what they need to do to not make the same mistakes that I made and go out and make their own mistakes, because that's totally fine, because everybody's going to make mistakes. So what I learned from chapter 3, never give up. When I went back to that bar, when I started bartending again, man, like, after being first class. I was platinum on American Airlines, yo. I rode first class all the time. I had shades I put on when I got in there, like, I'm too famous. Like, and then I went back to being a bartender and clocking in and clocking out and doing all that stuff. And it was like, man, this is hard. Like, never give up. You never know what's going to come around the next corner. You never know what's going to come just from being kind to somebody, being open to the universe. Always realize where you're standing too. Like, you got to know where you're at, because like, your mountaintop is someone else's foothills, and your foothills is someone else's mountaintop, and it's all you never realize, like, where you're standing. You might be in a place where you're like, all I want is to be able to buy my own 1176s and fill my studio with gear. And then there's someone else that's like, man, I just wish I knew how Pro Tools work. You know what I mean? There's someone else like, I wish I knew how this works. Like, you're already at a place that you dreamed about being. So realize there's other places you're dreaming about, you're going to be there. You just have to expect to work really, really hard to get there, because nothing is going to be given to you in this industry. Nothing at all. And if anyone is becoming a record producer thinking, I just want to party with rock stars, I just want to go out, I just want to be that guy, like, you are never going to be that guy. It's the wrong mentality. The only way you're going to be the person, if you want to achieve that, if you want to be that producer rock star, the only way to get there is to be the first guy in the studio and the last guy out. Never stop, never take your eye off the ball. Keep working hard, and you never know. In conclusion, I don't know, I don't have any good stuff here. I wrote, you never know, but if you keep going, it'll get pretty interesting. And don't forget to enjoy every single step of this process, including tonight.
Yeah.
This is huge. This is huge what you've done. So enjoy it, breathe it in. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, man, awesome,
all,
dude. Kill it. Do you mind some questions? Or?
Not at all.
Yeah,
Love
so
it,
you guys want to ask some questions? Anybody? Yep, go. Ready?
I'm a big fan of One Tree Hill. I watched it over the pandemic.
Oh, awesome.
So when you said you were Grubbs, I just clicked them out. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
you were like that guy.
That used to be a big thing, you know, like that, there's bands I learned about when I was younger that I may have never heard of if their song wasn't on the OC or something.
Yeah.
And how do you think, you know, the TV industry nowadays, how has it changed in terms of how artists are able to get exposure there? Is it largely the same?
That's a really good question. I think the music industry today, I work a lot in sync. right? I work a lot in sync. We've got a sync department at my company, and I actually, on the way out the door, I haven't placed a song in something in probably a year. My sync rep called me when I was walking out the door to come here and told me I got a new Apple sync that
Hey,
I'm going
Mike,
to get
you might tell, some people won't know what sync means. So just,
Sorry, synchronization is when you place a song in a television show or on a commercial, something like that. So I hadn't had my music used for something big in a minute, and I just got a call saying I got another sync today on the way out the door. So I'm still processing that information. But so how has TV changed, and how have syncs changed? I think the primary way that the industry has changed is that it is less brave right now than it's ever been, because people have realized that if they don't get, like, job safety is very low at stations, at creative places. Netflix, people are laid off every day, and you have to get the right song, and the best way to get the right song is to get a song that's really popular. So people tend to look for very predictable drivers, like drivers being like, is this song a TikTok hit? Is this song having success in some other region where I can justify bringing it over? So if it doesn't work, I can say to my team.
What is it that sticks out to you that makes you want to work with the artist?
That's a good question. What sticks out from, if I have someone just like cold reach out to me about being signed to our publishing company, what is the thing that makes me open it and take it seriously? I think authenticity is a big thing. Like, it's really easy to have, like, there's so much hustle involved in every single step of this game. There's so much hustle in getting clients and getting into the studio and getting the studio time and having the engineers take you seriously and doing whatever. It's so much. And it's hard, I think, sometimes to turn that off and just write an email as a human being to another human being. And so when I get an email from someone that's like, hey, like, you know, there's like, I feel the authenticity in it, that gets me excited. Also, it really is like, for me, I have the luxury of being able to just pick music that I really connect with. You know what I mean? Like the stuff. And there is a lesson there too, because you can get at the biggest publishing company in the world, but it could be the wrong publisher for you. And that would be a travesty, because they wouldn't be able to support you correctly. It has to be a real authentic match for it to work. So you could sign a publishing deal too early, and that could hurt you as well. Like, I think, like, for young artists and producers, I say, like, get a good administrator. Get someone who's going to administrate for you, collect your money, and make sure that you're all set up, because you only get to walk through that door one time. And when you walk through the door, like, you get offered that major label deal, or you decide to go to a bigger company. When you walk through the door, how organized you are is going to decide how they're going to treat you for the entirety of your time there. How professional you are is going to decide everything. So I think just be yourself in the email. And if you get a no, realize that that no is not saying that you're bad or that your music is bad. It's just saying that right now, maybe we signed another producer that makes the exact same stuff that you do the day before, and we have to honor that contract. So don't take no's personally. Just realize that no's are part of the game. It's just a rite of passage.
Yeah. I have a quick question I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine that, you know, because this is at least my thoughts about it, right? Just wise for getting, you know, connected and getting placement, getting seen by people like you that are going to end up placing things. I mean, just like when you came to New York and you weren't ready, right? You've got to be writing songs, right? So I'm assuming if that's true, like, obviously how much of your placement is people that you already know that do a certain thing because you've seen them already, and then something comes up, and then you go, oh, I think I'm going to call so-and-so and see if they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, how often, and I think that's an answer that if that is the truth, you know, you got to be doing it all the time, right? I mean, you got to be, you know, very prolific.
Yeah, you want to build you have to build a repertoire, but also it's like if you're building a whole base of music that you're going to be sharing with a publisher, sharing with someone, like, there's two mentalities. You can be the everything guy that's like, you know, maybe you're that one guy that's great at everything. Or you can be the guy that's like, you know what, man, like I really understand this one genre of music really well. I super excel at it, and I want you to know that if you need this specific thing, we have an artist on our roster named Prom Queen, who it doesn't have as much of a following, but she is a Vietnamese rapper that raps in English and Vietnamese back and forth, and it's so specific that becomes like great. That's a that's a niche.
It's a thing, yeah. Cool. Do we have any other questions?
This is a random
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Since you've had so many bartending experience, do your friends still expect you to make drinks for them?
Yes, they do.
There
Yes,
you go.
they do. But it's okay, because then I make them do my taxes. Or I make them do whatever it is that they do. So it's fine.
Well, cool. Well, I'm going to ask one last question. It's always the last question that I ask. So imagine, right, you are 18 again, or, just getting started again, right?
Yeah.
So what would be your best advice, certainly in this day and age, to somebody who's just getting started?
Man, things have changed so much. It feels like I feel like I would be stepping off of a spaceship onto a rocky moon, looking around going, what are all these things? What would I say to someone that is just starting out? I think it goes back to that one, like find a community.
Yeah.
Like find a community of people that you trust and that you love and that you can give to and take from and be one with, because they're going to be the thing that's going to keep you going and keep you on track as you do things.
Okay. Very cool, man. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
All right, very cool. All right, and everybody out there, we'll see you, catch you on the flip side. Cool.
Can we hear some of your music?
It's